Every morning, millions of people across the United States, Europe, and Australia wake up, roll out a mat, and practice yoga. They pay $30 a class. They buy $100 leggings. They download apps. They follow influencers. The global yoga industry is worth over $80 billion. Almost none of that money goes to India. Almost none of the people practicing yoga in Western gyms know that what they are doing is not exercise. It is one small fragment of a 5,000-year-old Indian science of the mind and body. A science so comprehensive, so sophisticated, and so advanced that modern neuroscience is only now beginning to understand why it works. And it is not just yoga, meditation, mindfulness, breathwork, sound therapy, the gut-brain connection, the relationship between consciousness and physical health. Every one of these fields, currently being presented as cutting-edge discoveries by Western science and wellness culture, was documented in detail in ancient Indian texts thousands of years ago. The West did not discover these things. It found them in India, removed the Indian context, gave them new names, and sold them back to the world at a profit. This is the story of the greatest intellectual theft in the history of human knowledge. Chapter 1. What yoga actually is. In Western gyms and wellness studios, yoga is a form of exercise, a way to stretch, to improve flexibility, to reduce stress, to get a better body. This understanding of yoga is approximately as accurate as describing a space shuttle as a very fast airplane. Yoga, in its original form, as documented in ancient Indian texts dating back to at least 3000 BC, is a complete system for the transformation of human consciousness. The word itself comes from the Sanskrit root yuj, meaning to unite or to yoke. What is being united is not the hamstrings with the lower back. It is individual consciousness with universal consciousness, the self with the source, the finite with the infinite. The physical postures, the asanas that Western yoga has almost entirely focused on, represent one branch of an 8-limbed system described by the sage Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, written approximately 2,000 years ago. The 8 limbs include ethical principles, physical postures, breath control, withdrawal of the senses, concentration, meditation, and finally samadhi, a state of unified consciousness that modern neuroscience is only beginning to study. The physical postures are the entrance. Western yoga stopped at the door and called it the destination. Chapter 2. The neuroscience that India knew first. In 2011, researchers at Harvard Medical School published a landmark study on meditation. Using MRI brain scans, they found that 8 weeks of regular meditation practice produced measurable physical changes in the structure of the brain. The amygdala, the brain's stress and fear response center, physically shrank. The prefrontal cortex, associated with awareness, concentration, and decision-making, physically thickened. The scientific world called it a breakthrough discovery. Ancient Indian texts had described exactly these changes in exactly these brain regions, using different language, for over 2,000 years. The Mandukya Upanishad, written approximately 2,500 years ago, describes 4 states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and a 4th state called turiya, that corresponds precisely to what modern neuroscientists call the default mode network suppression, observed in deep meditation. The Yoga Sutras describe in detail how specific meditation practices affect specific mental faculties, descriptions that map with extraordinary accuracy onto what modern neuroscience has discovered about the prefrontal cortex, the default mode network, and the autonomic nervous system. These texts were not describing spiritual metaphors. They were describing neurological mechanisms with a precision that required either extraordinary insight or direct systematic observation across thousands of years. Modern science spent decades and billions of dollars discovering what Indian sages had documented millennia earlier. Chapter 3. Pranayama and the breath. In the last decade, breathwork has become one of the fastest-growing wellness trends in the world. Wim Hof, box breathing, holotropic breathwork, the oxygen advantage. Books, courses, retreats, and apps teaching people how to control their breath to regulate their nervous system, improve athletic performance, reduce anxiety, and alter states of consciousness are generating hundreds of millions of dollars annually. The foundational techniques of every one of these systems were documented in ancient India under the name pranayama, from the Sanskrit prana meaning life force and ayama meaning expansion. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika, written in the 15th century but describing practices thousands of years older, documents dozens of specific breathing techniques, each with precisely described physiological effects. Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breathing, is described as balancing the activity of the two hemispheres of the brain. Modern neuroscience has confirmed that alternate nostril breathing directly affects hemispheric dominance through its action on the nasal cycle and the autonomic nervous system. Kapalbhati, rapid forceful exhalation, is described as cleansing the respiratory system and energizing the nervous system. Modern research has confirmed that it stimulates the sympathetic nervous system in ways consistent with these descriptions. Bhramari, humming breath, is described as calming the mind and reducing anxiety. Modern research has confirmed that the vibration produced by humming stimulates the vagus nerve, the primary pathway of the parasympathetic nervous system, producing measurable reductions in heart rate and cortisol. Every technique that is being sold as a modern wellness discovery was documented, named, and explained in ancient Indian texts centuries or millennia ago. Chapter 4: Ayurveda and the Gut Brain. In 2013, neuroscientists formally identified what they called the gut-brain axis, the direct neurological connection between the digestive system and the brain. The discovery revolutionized our understanding of mental health. Anxiety, depression, and cognitive function are now understood to be directly linked to the health of the gut microbiome. This was presented as one of the most significant discoveries in modern medicine. Ayurveda, the ancient Indian system of medicine documented in texts over 3,000 years old, placed the digestive system at the center of all human health as its foundational principle. The concept of Agni, the digestive fire, is the central organizing principle of Ayurvedic medicine. Every physical and mental health condition in Ayurveda is traced ultimately to the state of digestion. Every treatment begins with restoring digestive function. The three doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, that form the basis of Ayurvedic constitutional theory correspond with remarkable accuracy to the three primary branches of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and enteric systems. Modern medicine spent 3,000 years dismissing Ayurveda as primitive. It is now spending billions of dollars rediscovering its central insights and calling them breakthroughs. Chapter 5: The Theft. The pattern across all of these fields is the same. Ancient Indian knowledge is encountered by Western researchers. The Indian context, the spiritual framework, the philosophical system, the cultural origins is stripped away. The technique is isolated, studied in a laboratory, given a scientific explanation and a new Western name. It is then packaged, marketed, and sold globally, generating billions of dollars for Western wellness companies, pharmaceutical researchers, and technology platforms. India receives almost nothing. The global mindfulness industry is worth over $9 billion. The meditation app market is growing at 40% per year. The breathwork industry generates hundreds of millions annually. These industries are built on knowledge that originated in India. They are headquartered in California. Their investors are in New York. Their profits flow to shareholders in London and San Francisco. India, the civilization that developed these practices, refined them over thousands of years, preserved them through colonization, and kept them alive when the Western world dismissed them as superstition, generates a fraction of the economic value its own intellectual heritage produces. In 2001, recognizing this pattern, the Indian government established the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library. a database of over 900 traditional Ayurvedic formulations documented to prevent Western companies from patenting Indian remedies and charging Indians royalties for their own medicine. The database has already been used to successfully challenge over 200 patent applications in Europe and the United States. Applications for patents on traditional Indian remedies that Western companies were attempting to claim as their own inventions. 900 formulations protected, thousands more still unprotected. Billions in economic value still flowing away from India every year. 5,000 years ago, Indian sages sat in silence and systematically mapped the interior landscape of human consciousness. They documented what they found with extraordinary precision. They built systems of practice, yoga, meditation, pranayama, Ayurveda, that allowed anyone who followed them to replicate their discoveries. They preserved that knowledge through invasions, colonization, and centuries of dismissal by a world that called them primitive. And now that world is rediscovering what they knew, calling it neuroscience, calling it wellness, calling it breathwork, calling it mindfulness, and selling it back to a world that already had it. The irony is almost too large to see. The most ancient surviving science of the human mind was developed in India. The global industry built on it is headquartered everywhere but India. That is not an accident. It is a pattern. The same pattern that emptied India's treasuries, destroyed its textile industry, drew lines through its communities, and dismissed its history as mythology. India's knowledge, like India's gold, was taken, given new names, and sold back to the world at a profit. This is India Untold. Subscribe, because the story of what was taken from India is far larger than anyone has fully told.